Since time immemorial, human beings have sought love as if it were the answer to their existential void, as if encountering another person could fill the spaces in their soul that they have yet to explore. But what few understand is that love is not something you find. Rather, it is something that manifests when the psyche is in harmony. Carl Jung taught that a person's inner life is reflected in their relationships. It is not fate that binds us to certain people, but our own psychological structure, our shadows, and our deepest longings. The love that arrives without resistance, without struggle, without the need to disguise or suppress ourselves, only appears when we have integrated our own essence. But before reaching that point, the journey is complex because the unconscious places us before mirrors in which we can see what we have not yet understood about ourselves. Jung believed that every relationship we experience is an opportunity to know ourselves, to decipher the patterns that govern our lives, and to discover which parts of our psyche we have kept hidden. The people who attract us and those who repel us do not appear by chance. They are projections of our inner world, reflections of what we love in ourselves or what we have yet to accept. Perhaps you have felt an intense connection with someone, as if in their presence, time stood still and everything made sense. But you have also experienced the other extreme, relationships where uncertainty and anguish seem endless. The curious thing is that in both situations, the determining factor is not the other person, but what that relationship awakens in you. The unconscious takes charge of drawing into your life experiences that force you to see what you have not yet resolved. That's why, many times, love arrives in unexpected forms, and other times it becomes a source of suffering. The key is not in trying to control others or force circumstances, but in observing what emotions arise within you when you connect with someone. Jung said that what is not made conscious manifests in life as fate. In other words, if you don't take the time to explore your own psyche, your relationships will reveal, again and again, what you need to understand. The love that does not question, the love that flows and does not demand that you disguise yourself to be accepted, appears when you have done the inner work of integrating your shadow. The shadow is that part of you that you have repressed, those things you don't allow yourself to feel or express because you fear they make you less worthy of love. Perhaps you've learned that you must always be strong, that vulnerability is weakness. Or maybe you grew up with the belief that to be loved, you must please others, even if it means betraying yourself. Those beliefs are not just isolated thoughts, they are deep structures that shape your reality. Jung taught us that the only way to release the energy trapped in the shadow is by recognizing it. Every time a relationship triggers fear of abandonment, every time you feel intense jealousy or an uncontrollable need to be validated, it's not the other person generating those emotions. It's your own unconscious asking to be heard. There is no authentic love without awareness. There is no relationship that can heal what you yourself are unwilling to face. The reason so many relationships turn toxic is because they are built on self-denial. If you don't know who you are, if you don't allow yourself to shine with your own light, you will attract people who reinforce that disconnection. But when you begin to integrate your truth, when you stop seeking outside what has always been within you, something changes. You no longer need to beg for love, plead for attention, or mold yourself to fit someone else's expectations. That's when love appears, not as a need, but as an expansion of your own fullness. Jung reminded us that love is a force that doesn't belong solely to the human plane. It has a transcendental dimension. It is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between the self and the other, between the finite and the eternal. But to experience it authentically, you must first travel the most challenging path, the path to yourself. Because when your inner strength shines, The love that comes into your life doesn't demand that you change. It recognizes and celebrates who you truly are. That journey toward authentic love is not a destination, but a process of profound transformation. Jung taught that the human psyche is composed of multiple layers, some of them hidden even from ourselves. Every relationship we experience, every overwhelming emotion, every inexplicable attraction is an invitation from the unconscious to look beyond the superficial and delve into what we truly are. But most people don't want to do that work. They prefer to cling to the idea that love must be something external, something found in the other, without realizing that everything we project onto our relationships comes from our own inner world. When you meet someone and feel there's a special connection, your rational mind might try to explain it in terms of compatibility, shared interests, or physical attraction. However, from Jung's perspective, what's really happening is an encounter of psychic energies. The other person is not just an individual with certain traits. They are a mirror reflecting parts of yourself. That's why the most intense relationships are those that awaken deep emotions, whether positive or negative. When someone fascinates us, when we feel irresistibly drawn to them, it's because we see in that person aspects of our own psyche that we long to integrate. And when someone irritates us or provokes visceral rejection, we are seeing parts of ourselves that we've repressed, which the unconscious is showing us through the other. This principle applies not only to love, but to all significant relationships in our lives. The people around us are manifestations of our own internal conflicts, our wounds, and our desires. It's no coincidence that many repeat patterns in their relationships without realizing it. Those who fear abandonment end up attracting people who leave them. Those who seek validation from others often find themselves in relationships where they constantly have to prove their worth. And those who fear intimacy get entangled in bonds that never fully solidify. It's not about bad luck or a predetermined fate. It's about how the unconscious creates our reality to show us what we need to work on. The key to transforming our relationships and attracting authentic love lies in the integration of our own psyche. Jung believed that individuation, the process by which a person becomes the most complete and authentic version of themselves, is the true purpose of life. It's not enough to desire love or try to change others' behavior. The only way to change our experience is by transforming ourselves from within. And this only happens when we stop avoiding ourselves, when we face our shadows, and when we accept the parts of ourselves we've rejected out of fear or shame. When someone enters your life and stirs intense emotions in you, it's not by chance. It's the unconscious speaking to you through that connection. If that person fills you with joy, it's because they've touched a part of you that wants to expand. If they provoke anxiety, it's because they've activated a wound that hasn't yet healed. If you feel you can't live without them, it's because you've projected onto that relationship something you believe you lack. But here's the truth. No one can give you what you haven't allowed yourself to experience. There's no partner who can complete what you haven't integrated within yourself. What does exist is the love that arrives when you're no longer seeking to be saved, when you no longer need the other to fill your voids. That's the love that doesn't question, the love that flows without resistance, because it doesn't stem from lack, but from fullness. This type of love isn't built on need, but on choice. It's not based on emotional dependency, but on the freedom to be yourself without fear of rejection. To get there, you have to let go of many things, the beliefs that limit you, the patterns that keep you trapped in relationships that don't nourish you, the fear of being alone, the need to be approved. Letting go doesn't mean giving up on love. It means making space for true love to enter. It means stopping clinging to what hurts out of fear of the unknown. It means trusting that when you release what doesn't resonate with you, what is meant for you will find its way into your life. When you do this inner work, something surprising happens. Your energy changes. You no longer attract the same experiences. You no longer repeat the same cycles. The people who come into your life do so from a different place because you're no longer projecting lack, but sharing abundance. And when that love finally appears, the love that doesn't ask you to be different, that doesn't question your essence, that doesn't try to mold you to fit an expectation, you recognize it immediately. Not because it's perfect, but because it doesn't awaken in you the need to fight, to force, or to justify your worth. It simply is. And in that simplicity, in that authenticity, lies the true magic of human connection. This type of love isn't built on need, but on choice. It's not based on emotional dependency, but on the freedom to be yourself without fear of rejection. To get there, you have to let go of many things, the beliefs that limit you, the patterns that keep you trapped in relationships that don't nourish you, the fear of being alone, the need to be approved. Letting go doesn't mean giving up on love. It means making space for true love to enter. It means stopping clinging to what hurts out of fear of the unknown. It means trusting that when you release what doesn't resonate with you, what is meant for you will find its way into your life. When you do this inner work, something surprising happens. Your energy changes. You no longer attract the same experiences. You no longer repeat the same cycles. The people who come into your life do so from a different place because you're no longer projecting lack, but sharing abundance. And when that love finally appears, the love that doesn't ask you to be different, that doesn't question your essence, that doesn't try to mold you to fit an expectation, you recognize it immediately. Not because it's perfect, but because it doesn't awaken in you the need to fight, to force, or to justify your worth. It simply is. And in that simplicity, in that authenticity, lies the true magic of human connection. The love that flows without resistance is a manifestation of inner harmony. But for many, it seems like an unattainable concept. This is because most people have been conditioned to think that love is something you earn, something you must conquer or deserve. From a young age, we learn that affection depends on our behavior, on our ability to please others, on fitting certain standards. This conditioning takes root deep in the unconscious, and over time, it becomes the foundation of our relationships. Without realizing it, we repeat the same patterns over and over, seeking in the other what we believe we lack. Jung explained that genuine love is only possible when we've integrated our shadow, when we've stopped fearing those parts of ourselves we've repressed out of fear of rejection. In most relationships, people don't show themselves as they truly are. They present an edited version of themselves, a carefully constructed image to be accepted. But this kind of love is fragile because it's based on illusion, on the need to fit into the other's perception. It's not love. It's an implicit contract of mutual validation where each plays a role to keep the relationship in balance. And when one of them breaks that balance, the relationship collapses. The problem with these kinds of bonds is that they keep us disconnected from our essence. If you grow up with the belief that you must be a certain way to be loved, you'll spend your whole life trying to adapt to others' expectations without asking yourself who you really are. But true love doesn't require masks. It doesn't demand sacrifices of authenticity. It's a space of freedom where each person can be themselves without fear of losing the connection. The key to experiencing this kind of love is individuation, the process by which a person becomes their most authentic and whole self. This involves deep introspection, a willingness to confront one's own shadows, and a readiness to challenge the beliefs imposed since childhood. It's not an easy path. It requires unlearning everything we've been taught about love, relationships, and our own worth. But it's the only path to a genuine and lasting connection. When someone hasn't done this inner work, they will inevitably project their wounds onto their relationships. They'll seek in the other a solution to their own insecurities, trying to fill internal voids with a partner's presence. But this only generates dependency, anxiety, and suffering. Jung explained that when we're not aware of our own internal conflicts, we manifest them externally in the form of conflicted relationships, constant frustrations, and cycles that seem to repeat endlessly. That's why so many people feel trapped in patterns of failed relationships without realizing that the true solution isn't in finding the right person, but in transforming themselves. Authentic love can only arise between two people who have done this work of integration. It's the kind of love that isn't based on possession, need, or fear of abandonment, but on the conscious choice to share life from a place of fullness. It's not a love that consumes, but one that expands. It doesn't seek to fill voids, but to share abundance. It doesn't try to change the other, but accepts them completely, with all their light and shadows. When you reach this level of self-awareness and transformation, the relationships that once seemed difficult or impossible begin to lose their power over you. You no longer need to cling to bonds that drain you. You no longer desperately seek external validation. Instead, you become a magnet for people who are on the same wavelength, who have done their own inner work and can share with you a love based on authenticity and freedom. This type of love isn't a utopia, but it's also not something you find without effort. It requires courage, commitment, and a willingness to look within yourself without fear of what you might find. It means being ready to face the discomfort of transformation, to let go of what no longer resonates with your essence, and to trust that when you're aligned with your truth, the right relationships will manifest naturally. Most people aren't willing to take this path of self-knowledge because it requires letting go of the old structures that have defined their identity. They prefer to stay in relationships that, though they cause suffering, feel familiar. The fear of the unknown is stronger than the discomfort of living in an unsatisfying relationship. Jung said that the unconscious prefers the known, even if it's painful, because it represents safety. That's why many end up trapped in bonds where they can't be themselves, where they must suppress their emotions, where they feel they have to constantly strive to be accepted. But this kind of love is an illusion, a projection of unresolved wounds. Authentic love doesn't need to be forced. It isn't based on constant sacrifice or the need to control the other. It's a space where both people can evolve without fear, without the pressure to fit an expectation. It's a love that grows in freedom, not in dependency. However, to experience this love, you must undergo an inner transformation process. You must question every belief you've absorbed about what love and relationships mean. You must face your shadows, those aspects of yourself you've ignored or repressed because they feel uncomfortable. And above all, you must let go of the need to be saved by someone else. One of the biggest myths about love is the idea that a partner can complete us. This belief stems from a deep disconnection with one's own being. If you feel you need someone else to feel whole, it means you haven't yet integrated all the parts of your psyche. Jung taught that every person has within themselves everything they need to feel complete. But most have been conditioned to seek outside what they already have within. We seek validation from others because we don't know how to give it to ourselves. We seek love because we haven't allowed ourselves to love ourselves fully. We seek security in a partner because we don't trust our own ability to sustain ourselves emotionally. But the truth is, no one can give us what we haven't learned to give ourselves. When a person doesn't feel enough, they will constantly seek someone to reaffirm their worth. But this search only generates suffering because any external validation is fleeting. If your self-esteem depends on someone else's approval, you'll always live in a state of anxiety, fearing that validation might disappear. Jung explained that authentic love can only arise when we've learned to sustain ourselves emotionally on our own, when we no longer seek in others what we think we lack, but share from a place of fullness. Many people fear being alone because they associate solitude with emptiness. But true loneliness isn't being without company. It's being disconnected from oneself. You can be in a relationship and feel completely alone if you haven't learned to inhabit your own presence. Jung taught us that individuation is a process of self-discovery that allows us to feel complete without needing to depend on anyone else. And it's in this state of wholeness that true love can flourish. When you stop desperately seeking love outside yourself, you begin to attract relationships that reflect your true essence. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer have to strive to be someone you're not. You simply exist in your authenticity, and the love that comes into your life is a reflection of that inner truth. But to reach this point, you have to let go of many things: the need for approval, the fear of rejection, the belief that without a partner you're not enough. It's a process of purification, of shedding all the layers of conditioning that have obscured your true identity. Relationships are mirrors. They show us clearly who we are and which parts of ourselves still need to be integrated. If you constantly attract conflicted relationships, it's not a coincidence. It's a sign that there's something within you that you haven't yet worked on. If you always find yourself in dynamics where you feel you must strive to be loved, it's an invitation to look inward and ask yourself why you believe love must be difficult. When you change your relationship with yourself, your external relationships change too. Because the love we experience outside is just a projection of the love we allow ourselves to feel for ourselves. And here's the key: love isn't something you seek, it's something you cultivate within yourself. When you love yourself deeply, when you honor your truth, and allow yourself to be without fear, love appears naturally. Not because you're chasing it, but because you become a magnet for it. You no longer need to beg for love or settle for less than you deserve. When your energy shifts, the people who come into your life shift too. And in that moment, the love that appears is the kind that doesn't ask you to be different, that doesn't question you, that simply recognizes and celebrates your existence. When a person reaches this level of awareness, they begin to notice patterns that previously went unseen. They realize that every romantic experience was a lesson, that every relationship that ended left an important teaching, that every person who entered their life wasn't an accident, but a manifestation of their own internal state. Jung called this the principle of synchronicity. When our psyche is aligned, the external world reflects that alignment through meaningful events and encounters. In other words, it's not fate or chance that determines who we attract, but the level of evolution we're at. If you've experienced relationships where you felt you had to constantly fight to be loved, it's because deep down there was still the belief that love must be hard, that it's only valuable if earned through effort. But when you transcend that idea, when you recognize that real love doesn't have to be a battle, but a state of being, you start attracting people who reflect that new reality. There's no longer a need to cling to relationships that don't flow. There's no fear of losing someone who isn't aligned with your truth. You simply trust that the right love will appear when you're ready to receive it. But this is where many people stumble. When they start working on themselves, they expect immediate results. They want to see external changes without giving themselves time to integrate the internal ones. Jung warned that the process of individuation doesn't happen overnight. It's a lifelong journey. It's not about doing a few self-awareness exercises and expecting perfect love to magically appear. It's about transforming your relationship with yourself to the point where love is no longer a need, but a natural extension of your internal state. When you reach this level of clarity, you become very selective about the people you allow into your life. Not because you think you're superior, but because you're no longer willing to compromise your peace for a connection that isn't authentic. You learn to recognize immediately the relationships based on fear, dependency, or manipulation. And instead of clinging to them, you let them go with gratitude, knowing each experience was a lesson that brought you closer to your truth. You no longer seek love from lack, but from abundance. You no longer beg for attention, because you know the one who truly needs to see you is yourself. True love isn't possession. It's not sacrifice. It's not need. It's the manifestation of two souls who have done the inner work of knowing themselves, accepting themselves, integrating themselves. It's the meeting of two people who don't seek to complete each other, but choose to walk together in freedom. And when this happens, love stops being a struggle. It stops being an enigma. It stops being a source of suffering. It becomes a sacred space where both can grow without fear, without masks, without conditions. Not everyone is ready to experience this kind of love, because it requires a profound level of honesty with oneself. It requires letting go of old stories, releasing resentments, taking responsibility for one's own well-being. But those who are willing to do this work discover that love isn't something found outside. It's something that has always been within them, waiting to be recognized. And the moment that truth is accepted, love appears effortlessly, without resistance, without questions. When you understand that the love you experience in the external world is a reflection of your relationship with yourself, you stop desperately searching for someone to make you feel whole. Instead, you begin to build a self-love so solid that you no longer need external validation to feel worthy. And when that happens, something shifts in how people respond to you. You stop attracting relationships based on fear and lack, and instead, people appear who see you as you are, without needing you to disguise yourself or adapt to fit in. This doesn't mean relationships will be perfect or free of challenges. But when two people approach each other from authenticity and not from a need to fill voids, conflicts no longer become destructive battles, but opportunities for growth. There's no fear of being abandoned because you know no one can truly leave you when you sustain yourself emotionally. There's no anxiety about losing love because you understand that love isn't something you can possess, it's something you simply share. At this point, your life transforms, not just in terms of love, but in every aspect of your existence. When your energy shifts, when you stop acting from lack and start living from fullness, everything around you responds to that new frequency. Opportunities come more easily, connections feel more natural, life itself becomes a more fluid and harmonious experience. And most importantly, you're no longer afraid of being alone because you've learned to enjoy your own company. When you reach this level of integration, any love that enters your life will be a complement, not a necessity. Jung taught us that love is a manifestation of our relationship with our own unconscious. And if you're still trapped in patterns of relationships that cause you pain, if you still feel that love is an unattainable mystery, the answer isn't outside, it's within you. It's time to look inward, to question what you've believed about love, to let go of what no longer serves you, and to allow yourself to be the best version of yourself. Not because that will attract the right person, but because that's how you'll find peace and fullness within. And when that happens, love will appear in the most unexpected way. But this time, not as a struggle, but as a celebration of who you already are. If this message resonated with you, I'd like to invite you to share your experience in the comments. Have you ever felt that the love you've lived reflected your own internal state? Have you noticed how your relationships changed when you yourself changed? Leave your comment and tell me your story. I love reading what you think and learning from each of you. Plus, if you know someone who needs to hear this message, share it with them. Sometimes a few words can change someone's perspective and help them on their path of transformation. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to keep exploring these topics together. topics that help us understand ourselves better and live with more awareness. Every interaction you have with this content helps this message reach more people, people who might need to hear this right now to find answers on their own journey. So give it a like, comment, share, and join this community that's growing every day with the purpose of bringing more light and understanding to our lives. Thank you for being here, for opening your mind and heart to these ideas, and for being part of this space of learning and growth. Remember, true love isn't sought. It manifests when you're true to yourself. And when your inner strength shines, the love that comes into your life doesn't question it. It simply recognizes and celebrates it. See you in the next video.